So I think the big change is that I had to leave Viddsee.
Willingly, unwillingly?
As a co-founder, I was asked to leave.
Did you feel betrayed because it was a company that you co-founded, right?
For a long time, I also realized that you mean this work can be done to grow means to slow down, right? To actually stop. This work that I needed to do, we were not taught in school how to handle that.
Thank you, everyone. Welcome to Lift Elevate X interview. We are very, very happy today to have Derek Tan. If you don't know him, you need to Google. He still own, right?
A shareholder.
Okay, still own a shareholder of Viddsee, one of the most successful video content creation in Singapore. And today we are very, very honored to have him. We met each other about a year plus ago, and honestly, we didn't expect us to be sitting across one another a day like this, whereby I will find out and Derek will share more about himself. So welcome, Derek.
Thank you, Cass.
Yeah, so maybe we'll start off with you sharing a little bit more about yourself, who you are, what you're doing, and what are you doing now? Yeah.
And I'll start a little bit, towards the beginning a little. I've always loved storytelling. As a kid, I would remember curating kind of films, TV shows on my VHS, player and all. But at the same time, I know I'm really good at science and technology. But growing up, I guess it's always this crossroad, right, between technology and content and the arts. And I've always tried to find a place in that. I guess I was lucky in my first job where I was actually able to build a streaming platform. That was with StarHub, telco
wow.
back then.
Okay.
And it really epitomized, I think, what I've always been doing as a kid. Bring content and bring technology in place together. And I think that role allowed me to kind of see my love for content, bring kind of content out to the world or to Singapore in that sense, but using technology. I think it's the forefront of doing that. What shifted a little was I always thought the TV was the center of people's world. Again, as a kid growing up, the TV was the center of my world. But with the growing kind of like technology, internet, the mobile phone started to become more of that, right? And during that point in time when I was building the streaming platform, it was very much the iPad was coming out. Devices you were able to kind of like watch content on the move. And I said, okay, I'm gonna go out to Silicon Valley, work for a mobile startup, just to pivot myself away from TV to the mobile kind of world. But what I got out there was really immersing. So I've always wanted to be in LA, like the center of content and Hollywood, right?
Yep.
I ended up North California, in Silicon Valley itself.
Oh, it's still in US.
Yes, correct. Still California, right? But just being at the heart of, I think, technology and startup, and I think I immersed myself in there. I think one of the big takeaways I had, having conversations with the founders, was starting a company, starting up. It's really a state of mind. It wasn't really about being a place like Silicon Valley itself. And I held true to that in the sense that I've wanted to bring that state of entrepreneurship, that state of mind, back to Singapore to see what I've seen, building products, building teams, bring talent, attracting the talents together, right? And see what I could do in Singapore. So that was really the
Starting point.
point of starting Viddsee.
So maybe I'll be curious to find out, what makes you, or what was in you that have you want to bring something back to Singapore? Because nobody asked you to do that, right? Nobody asked you, but it was you being in that environment whereby you learn a lot, would you say? So what triggered you to want to bring it back to Singapore?
Yeah, I think on one hand, because you kind of like design so much of what you want to do with content and technology, seeing that, I think founders at that place taking charge of their destiny, in terms of having that vision, right, what they want to build, pulling together, I think, resources and people, and just seeing a team work together in realizing that vision. I thought that was very powerful, right? It's very much like making a film as well, right? The writer or director has a certain idea and vision, and he pulls together that crew to produce, and everyone goes through that journey to get that baby out, right? That film out. And I kind of saw that parallelism in a startup as well also. The founders having that vision. And I think for me was that desire to impact the world through stories. It was something that I've seen with films and what stories can do, to change mindsets, to build empathy with people. And I thought that was a powerful way to impact lives and change. How do I do that? I guess in creating a product that I could kind of like own, and at the same time chart forward that vision with a team, right? And at that point in time, you only have that vision. You don't know where you will end up, what the business models would be and all, right? But it's really that belief. I think that belief in what we wanted to do with, that vision, that idea, pull people along the way, make sense of the business model so that we could sustain doing what we're doing, right?
Yep.
And chart along. Right? And I think that was what I saw, I think in my experience in the Valley. And I wanted to kind of bring that back because there was also this very deep passion as well as purpose that I kind of saw myself at that point in time.
So would you say from then, that point, you found somewhat of a purpose for you? It was then.
I think what drove purpose at that point in time was very much the passion in storytelling, right? So everything that I tried to do gravitated around this passion. And at the same time, I knew my strength, right? My strength in technology, product development, this mindset that I kind of brought about in the Valley as well also. But gravitate that towards the passion. Again, I don't know if I found that purpose at that start, but it was really driven by that passion. Now, when I started working on the company and the platform, what I started to see was this, I call rojak of ideas coming together. And it's not a melting pot, right? Melting pot meant that different ideas will be melted and everyone becomes same at the output. But really this rojak, I think we need to give context of what rojak is. It's a mixed fruit bowl here in Singapore.
With prawn
paste, right? Got pineapple, cucumber, youtiao, etc. Right?
Yep.
All coming together. And when you taste it, it has this prawn paste tone, but you have each flavor kind of like come about.
It's almost like the prawn paste coated all the fruits.
The flavors and
and you have different fruits flavor, and then you have the fried fritters, which has that crunchy taste.
Yeah, which is what I saw the platform fundamentally built out, right? It was a rojak of ideas. It was a rojak of stories from different culture, countries, all across Asia, right? And we were curating stories that we knew could go out to people, build empathy, of the universal human truth to it, right? That's the prawn paste sauce. But each comes in with their own flavor, right? Each comes in with their own,
fruits,
their own culture, their own language, right? And ultimately, when that story kind of like goes out to people, I think what we saw was really this, audience coming and watching and really seeing, I guess empathizing with the stories, with the characters. And it triggers something in their head, right? In terms of, how do they build empathy? How does their own kind of like mindset starts to change as well also? And I thought it was very powerful. It was very scalable with films and stories. And it was a way for us to kind of just amplify change at that point in time.
I see. So what I'm hearing from you, Derek, says is that passion is the fundamental of all your energy, all your focus, all your commitment towards creating Viddsee, right?
Yes.
And you had something in you whereby you saw in the Valley, whereby you saw what other founders have done in creating what I call a committed vision towards anything, right?
Yeah.
And then you power that up with your own energy.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And you said something that I'm very curious about. You said, I know my strengths, right? When someone says, I know I mean, come on, right? I picked that up. I know my strength. That means you are quite aware of yourself. So would you say awareness is important. All right. I mean, we have all sorts of awareness. We have personal awareness, situational awareness,
Yeah.
intellectual awareness. But would you say overall, awareness is important to bring you from where you want to go towards your vision, your dream? And how do you develop that awareness?
Yeah, so I would say I was very lucky to find that awareness very early in life and to hone in onto it um, in charting, I think, what I've always wanted to do. But I also know that there's a weakness in terms of maybe, okay, for me, I know my strength in math and science. I know my weakness in language. And I was dealing with a medium like film. I felt it geared towards more language. So I knew that there was a bit of that weakness of mine in terms of how do I pursue that. So what had happened was in this crossroad between technology and
Language.
content, right? I did consciously take on a technological role in terms of studying engineering. I was doing things like video compression. So I was really going to
Technical.
I was going to the technical. I was going to the nitty gritty, tech bits of content.
Yep.
In that sense. But on the side, really, the awareness of that passion still kept me going in terms of working on the stories, the storytelling bit as well. Also. So, yes, I think that awareness helped me to say, I want to chart my path in this space where I would love to stay close to content. But at the same time, it doesn't stop me from going and exploring different paths to it as well. So I may not need to jump in to be a filmmaker, but I could come in and figure out how do I use technology to play a role, I think, in the content industry. And I think, again, going back to the first role, building a streaming platform, one of the first streaming platforms in Singapore, I think I was like, wow, that's amazing to have, I think, that opportunity. But I don't know, that awareness and that drive, that focus, kind of lands you there, even though I did not know how it all kind of like
Come together.
right?
Yeah.
Especially when you're at that point in time, you're trusting, I think, that flow or that process or that journey that you want to take.
Yeah.
Where it ends up, I think you can only do that looking backwards.
Looking backwards,
Yeah, looking backwards. But
Connecting
I'm
the
happy and I would say lucky to be able to kind of land to where I was. Yeah.
Interesting. You also mentioned that big word, right? That a lot of people are looking towards, which is opportunity.
Yes.
So, when opportunity comes, we usually have two routes. We can either take it or we can bail it.
Yeah.
What was within you? What were you thinking about? What was the mindset? What were some of the things that was going through you for you to embark on the opportunity, not knowing, right? Just as you mentioned, you are not very sure, you're uncertain, but that passion drives you, and then you say yes to the opportunity.
Wow. I don't know. I think being very focused and foolish also around like that passion kept you going. But I remember along the way I met mentors who mentioned also that I think to sustain oneself, you kind of think about how do you make money. I think especially in the space of content at that period of time. I remember a mentor mentioned to me that if you chase after the money, right, like it may not sustain you in terms of where you might end up in terms of pursuing that passion, right? It might come in later in life. But if you actually pursue that passion, you'll find ways to sustain yourself. The money will come. And again, I don't know if just being young and foolish, right? Kind of took that route and say, yeah. And it's gotten me that far also, right? By sticking on with passion and understanding my strength, that there is a certain direction or vision that I wanted to move towards. I guess trusting that process, not knowing where exactly to land me, but you find joy, right? You find joy in pursuing that passion of yours. And the decisions that you make around your passion, it also finding that stability, finding that, this technology job with that's dealing with content, you realize that you're fulfilling something that's inside you, like that passion. But at the same time, that sustenance, right? That thing that helps,
Stability.
that stability, but also the things that you started to do, to learn, to grow, starts to come with it as well also. So looking backwards, I thought that advice was very apt, right? You lean in on that passion, things will come as well, because you somehow have that drive and that desire to make it work, but also find new paths with it to just grow and learn along the way. Yeah.
It's interesting because what I'm hearing is that you have some sort of an end goal, but the end goal wasn't even
Yes.
clear, right? And definitely the journey and the path from point A to point B is in some ways non-existent.
Yeah.
But you trusted yourself, you were aware about yourself, and then mentors came along the way, and they gave you the advice, and you heed that advice, and in some ways you trotted along,
Yeah.
and you learn a lot while being on that journey. And I'm sure you're still learning, which we are going to, talk
Get
to
to
you
there.
more about that. But what I would say is summarizing it is that have that vision, passion first, and that will fuel you up to do in some ways what you need and what is required for sustenance, for stability, and most importantly, what I'm hearing is that learning along the way. So the ability, the openness to learning is important, would you say?
Yes. So that I think that learning and openness in pursuing that passion and say starting Viddsee, right? Because it start off from that passion. The purpose starts to anchor in more and more, right? And continuing from what I mentioned about realizing that this is a platform where it's a roadmap of ideas and filmmakers, you start realizing that the role I play or what the platform was doing was empowering storytellers to share their stories. We found audiences, we amplified their message. I had this one film, a Singapore short film that just went 200 million worldwide.
Wow.
Right, and it's a powerful story on giving, right, and it's something that has inspired many people around the world, from a UK grandmother to a Brazilian kid, right, who has written to us about the stories in film. And you just realize that, wow, with this platform, I am not just one filmmaker making a film, trying to create content and share my stories out, right? By creating a platform where I'm allowing filmmakers to share their stories, being a platform where we help filmmakers produce their short films, their stories, and then amplifying that message out to the world. And I think that was the point where the passion, because a lot of times when you are like passionate to be a filmmaker, you want to be the filmmaker. You want to kind of get your story out. But I realized embracing, yes, my strength in the technology bit, the product, the system building bit, right? I realized that, this is my role in the industry. My role was to create a platform where storytellers can actually share their stories out to the world, and that I am fueling that for number one, Asian stories. Number two, helping to sustain livelihoods for filmmakers as well, also in getting their stories out. And I think along the way, just building this ecosystem, right? And I think that was where purpose became more became clearer, right? That purpose was empowering creatives to bring their stories out, to impact the world. And I stole this line from a film festival, Women's Film Festival, but the tagline was building empathy, driving action. And I thought it summed up what I was really doing and building, right? Through stories, through the amplification of the stories, and our audience watching, it was really building empathy. It was, I've always said that it's like traveling without traveling, right? Like I get to be in Korea, Jakarta, like in Indonesia, right? Through the stories.
Yeah.
And not as a traveler, not as a tourist, right? I get to go behind homes.
Yeah.
I get to see characters. I get to interact with people through stories, through films, through the journeys, right? The change and the pain that they go through, and each in their own kind of like culture, each in their own kind of like situation. And I think that's powerful for us to be able to put ourselves into the characters, right, and see that at scale. And I think that does something in terms of changing your perspective, right, building your mindset around. And I thought the idea of driving action, starts from there lah, right? Because you start to empathize, you start to think you can, make that change as well. Also, it's the first step. And yeah, so that passion became, I think, purpose.
Wow.
Yeah.
What I hear you say is it first starts with you in the valley, right? You have that passion. And then now, because you have an avenue or vehicle that you created, Viddsee, then you pull in a bigger circle who are the creatives, who are the creators, whereby they also want their stories, they want maybe their narratives to be going out, right? And using Viddsee with films, another I would say avenue, right? Because you have the platform, then after that now you use another avenue called the films to reach out to another bigger outer sphere of people that is looking for that.
Correct.
Who are the viewers. And then in some way or another, we all resonated through what I call empathy, right? The frequency is about a story of empathy, but it starts with you, then your team, then the creators, the creatives, and then to the audience who then receive it.
Right.
And then that's where change happened for you, and that's where passion became purpose. Wow. Super powerful.
Yeah.
Super powerful.
Thank you.
So maybe now, would you like to share with us what are you doing now? How different is it that compared to when you were with Viddsee, and what happened that have you learned where you are now?
So I think the big change is that I had to leave Viddsee, right?
Okay.
So
Okay, I'm going to ask that willingly, unwillingly, because there was so much passion and you found your purpose, right? We were talking about it. So did you leave willingly or unwillingly?
I think the trigger point was a state of surprise. So it wasn't something that I kind of thought about or initiated,
Okay.
honestly. As a co-founder, I was asked to leave. That moment itself was complex, right? To be honest, I felt very numb, I think, when that conversation happened as well. But I know that when you unpeel it, it was just a lot of deep emotions happening. Because I think stating it very clearly is, as a co-founder, as someone who has gone through this journey, finding passion, turning a purpose, and having a vehicle to help me, drive
Further.
life's work in that sense, right? And to suddenly say, sorry, you have to get out of this vehicle and this ship, right? There's a lot to process. There's a lot of, I think, loss happening at that point in time, right? A loss of the vision, the loss of an identity, a loss of a job. It was a moment where self-doubt just suddenly just come in, like, what happened, right? But it was also, at the end of the day, it was a decision that I made on my own. Right? It was a decision that I said, I'm not gonna fight this path, right? But at the same time, accepting, very layered also, because the point that it happened was post-pandemic. I was growing the company, revenues was just growing year on year. I was driving a lot of that with my team. I felt very tired, to be honest also. So I was burnt out without knowing I was burnt out.
Okay, so you were already feeling tired.
Yes. All that all came together, and I just felt like, I don't want to fight this also. I want the company to run and continue, right, under the leadership of my co-founder. And that's just trust for him to carry on as well.
Okay.
So
good.
it was,
I mean, you mentioned trust.
Yeah.
And along with trust, there's another word in the opposite side of it. Did you feel betrayed? Because it was a company that you founded. I mean, you co-founded, right? And it was, in that sense, your first undertaking of something whereby you could see and it has actualized in front of you, from your passion to purpose and it's already working, like you say, right, with the revenue coming in and so on and so forth. Did you feel a sense of betrayal?
The irony to it is I felt like I wasn't angry at my co-founder.
At that point.
Actually, at that point in time, and even after when I was having conversations with folks, I never held on to that. To that anger, like, you know, he did something wrong, right? Was it betrayal? I don't know. Like, I would say yes, I want to feel that, but I felt like deep down inside, it also didn't feel. Because at the same time also, I felt like it was also going to be one of the hardest decisions he has to make. Right?
So you were putting yourself in his shoes more than how you were feeling.
Yeah.
What about abandonment? You know, sorry,
No.
I'm very good with the word trust, right? That's why I coach. So, you know, with trust, there's always a flip side, right? So if you didn't feel betrayal, did you feel abandonment?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I think for a long time, you know, we built this together, side by side. You know, early days, you kind of, you know, cover each other.
Roughing it out, right?
Yeah, roughing out. Of course, in the later stage, you know, you're gonna bottleneck if you do the same thing together with your co-founder. You need to divide and conquer as well, also, right? And you know, you kind of have each other's shoe, or back, sorry, in terms of, you know, how we're gonna chart forward. And I took the commercial route, right? I drove the commercial route and built the revenues, right? We kind of got to where we are as well, also. So I think yes, when that happened as well, so you're like, huh? Like, you didn't trust me enough to kind of have your back in that sense. Yeah, it wasn't betrayal, but yeah, it was this sense of
Abandonment.
abandonment, which I think then translate also to, wow, am I going to abandon also my team and like this vision I have, right? And it was just very complex, I think, for me to process and navigate at that point in time.
So maybe you can share a little bit about where you are now. Yeah, what are you doing since then, and then we talk a little bit more.
Okay, but maybe I could lead on from that journey as well. So because I think when you lose that identity, right, you will try to grasp and hold on to something. And I think being an entrepreneur, you would, and I've been running, context-wise, I've been running that for 10 years, right? Newtonian law of inertia, right, is that you'll just keep going, right?
Yeah.
Unless some opposite force stops you.
And it's bigger than what you are.
Correct. And I felt like I was in that state of inertia, and like momentum was just moving, right? Because you run so long, so fast. I don't, and yes, leaving meant you stop, right? The emails disappear. You don't have to check them. You're not accountable to the team or anything, right? But you're still at a state of movement. And to be honest, at that point of time, I remember being in a state of movement. Like, calendars were still filled. And I think a lot of it was, people wanting to understand what happened. But it was really close connections, industry kind of like mentors that I've worked with as well. Because it came to a shock, I think, for them as well also. For all that love and purpose that I built, right?
I mean, if you wasn't prepared for it, I can imagine for them,
so I felt like I was moving forward still, right? Deeply inside, I felt like I was still trying to hang on. Right, I wasn't processing anything. I was just trying to hang on. But at the same time, I think not everyone, like folks were saying, what's next, right? So you're also anticipating what's next. So I felt like I was in a state of still moving. And because there was this expectation of what's next, that I had to go find what's next fairly quickly.
Was it something tangible that you were looking for in terms of your what's next?
I think so, and because I tied so much of identity to work, what was tangible was likely work at that point of time, right? And it just kept going for a few weeks, in fact 6 weeks. Because when 6 weeks that happened, right, a few things happened, right? One was something stirred inside. Right? I was swimming one day and I was like, what am I doing? Why am I still so busy? I don't have work. But why am I still busy?
Acting like I have work. Acting, right?
Yeah.
Could it be like an automatic That's definitely, it sounds like an automatic, right?
The inertia.
Yeah.
I kind of attributed that to the inertia because you've been hustling for so long. I just didn't know how to stop. I just didn't know how to stop. From a self standpoint, I kind of felt that. From a relationship standpoint, because at that point in time, my wife was also not working.
Okay.
Right, we kind of took that break together. It was odd that I had to slot her in my calendar and not spending that time with her. It was very bad, right? And we kind of had a bit of an argument around it. And this just came off from an argument with my co-founder, right? That led to like this abandonment, this state, right? I was very afraid.
To lose again.
Yeah, to lose again also, right? So that was also on the relationship standpoint. And I have two boys, right? And you know, I've always bring them along to school in the morning, but being this state of still moving meant that you're still rushing for something. Even though you're not checking emails or you're trying to like clear something for work, you're still rushing for something. And that meant that I wasn't still in the moment with them. That was just automatic, bring you to school. So that was kind of like that relationship bit as well also. And I think what happened at that moment was a friend came along and he shared with me this book, Transitions, you know, by William Bridges. And I think he could understand that state I was at. And he was, I think, the first person who told me to stop. Or to also, with this book, taught me how to stop. Because the questions of what's next, the expectations, the things that's within and you know you're still moving, meant that I say I'm on a pause, I'm on a break, right? But
Actually, you're not.
I wasn't because I didn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And this was me for many years, being that kid who loves film and that drive and passion in trying to bring technology and film together. I've been running all the way till the genesis of or the creation of Viddsee. And to that point of you know leaving, I've not stopped.
Yep.
I've not learned how to transit at all. I've been very focused in that life track. I didn't know what to do. I was very lost. So for someone to come in and actually tell me to stop was actually the first time to process all that. So the book was, there's 3 steps, right, to transition. Actually stopping, ending the last chapter, which I never did, right? Because I hanged on to it. And I still kept on to that. And so it's only through that process of truly ending that you can finally go into a state of pause. Right? So I felt like I thought I was doing all 3 at once, right? Like, okay lah, right? I end chapter very easy one, right? And then just go on a break, and then just go find what's new lah. And I think I was doing that for 6 weeks, right after leaving, right? Thinking that it was a process of a pause.
But actually, it's not.
Actually, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting also because, you know, previously we mentioned that you have a lot of awareness, so you're able to trust yourself. But then come, in some ways, at the lowest point of your life, whereby you are asked to go, and in some ways, it also have you take a look at your marriage and relationship with your wife. Came along a man that give you a book because he empathized with you. In some ways, he understands what you're going through. What allows you now to transfer that trust from yourself to him as well as the book?
Wow.
Because there's no way you would be able to trust yourself, right?
And it's correct. And it's funny because for a long time I also realized that you mean this work can be done, like, you know, to grow means to slow down, right? To actually stop. I didn't believe in it, right? So yeah, so to the point where that happened, I was still in the mindset where, are you sure? Because I haven't gone through that yet. But also at that point of time, you know, something was stirring inside, you know, and relationships were also at that state of, you know, coming out from the co-founder relationship, you know, seeing things that's happening within family as well also, I think puts you in a state of, why not? Why not kind of like let go of that.
Did you have something along the pathway that says, I have nothing to lose already?
I have nothing to lose, but I also know that it was this deep discomfort, right? That I've not done this before.
So you were feeling a lot of discomfort around
Yeah,
it.
I have this self-doubt that's happening. I have this discomfort. I've never thought that self-reflection or doing inner work at that point of time, when you're building a company, could mean that you could go faster. Because a lot of times at that point of time, hitting that goals, the ever-growing goals, meant that you just had to go faster and faster and faster. There was
Non-stop hustling.
Correct, non-stop hustling, because you equate doing things to achievements. So there was never in the mindset of slowing down to go faster. Nothing of that sort. Right?
You've heard of it, or you've never heard of it, and you never.
I've not heard of it. That's why I don't. Or rather, yes, maybe I've heard of it, but I just pass it along because I don't believe it lah. Like there's no such thing as slowing down to go fast. Right. So I might have unconsciously passed it aside. Right. To do deep reflection, right, at that point of time for yourself, to see where your skill sets are in leading teams. Never came, right? It was really you're a doer lah. You do to improve. You go through it.
Looking outside of you to improve the doing, the action
Correct.
part.
A lot of it is external.
Yeah.
Correct. A lot of it is outside. And I would say that it was then. Okay, then I gave myself a deadline because I was like, okay, book come. I've got these steps. I think I'll find an answer, and that was around mid-November. So I'll say, okay, I give myself the next 6 weeks because it's going to be end of the year. And I think because you're in the state of doing and running a company, you always have your end goal. This is what we're trying to achieve.
So end year.
Yeah, end year there's a target that you're going to hit, right? So you kind of give yourself that deadline. You give yourself that deadline to say, I'll find an answer by the end of the year, right? So let's start working on myself, right? Let's just start changing the way I do things. Stop meeting people too much as well. So spend time with
Self.
family and self. And I think that was kind of that process that I tried to take. When you reach that point, the end, that deadline. Oh my gosh, where is it? Right, where is that answer? And I felt scared. I felt so anxious because I expected, knowing I have the guidebook to transit and change, that I would be at
Somewhere.
I'll be somewhere. I'll be at a state of change, but I wasn't.
So you didn't find what you want.
I did not find what I want.
Because you didn't find what you want because you already envisioned it
It'll
would
be
look
some
like that.
state.
Some state that you will give me the answer. But then when you reach the end of the year,
I didn't have it.
nothing.
And that was then the amazing point. And you talked about it, letting go. And I think that was at that point of time that I truly finally let go. Right? And I remember I was actually in Australia, like I was on a trip with my wife, right? And I was just looking out to the open sky. It was just a powerful moment where it's just, I don't know, you're at the, just letting go to the universe or like just space, right? And you're just accepting. I don't know, you just come to a point where you're accepting that the answer's not going to come. It's not going to come in the next 1 hour. Just sitting here, right? You're not in the state of thinking. You're on holiday. Just let go lah. And I think at that moment where you just let go, wow, the answer came. And it was inside there. It was
Nothing external. Nothing like a guidebook, step 1, step 2, step 3. So what came inside? At that moment when you let go, the answer came inside. What was the answer?
I felt like the answer was inside. That was waiting to come out.
Which was?
It was that I needed to somehow work on that self to actually dig within myself, right? So I came to a realization that I needed to be present. I needed to not to be worried about the future and the anxiety, the discomfort that I would bring myself into. Not to be so held up by the past, right? Letting go of that past. And just to be that moment. Because when you're at that
Present.
moment, looking at the sky, knowing that deadline is here, right? You just embrace that moment. Not to be afraid, putting aside everything that's done, and just to be in that. And I think then it dawned on me, oh, that's what the book is trying to tell me, right? Like there's a state of end, there's a state of
Presence.
don't know what, and like they call it the pause. And then there's a state of like new beginnings and all that, right? But
Right.
I felt like, oh, okay, that's the state that I needed to be in. And it was an unfamiliar state, right? It was an unfamiliar state because I've never done this transition. I've never stopped to realize that answers can happen when you're at a state of stop. And you gave me an analogy of bow and arrow. I remember one of our conversation.
Yes.
I've been that person taking aim, but constantly shooting my arrows, right? At first, yes, I hit the bullseye, right? But over time, I just keep going, right? I'll be tired, right? Everything, mentally, physically, I'll start
Missing.
right? But to try and hit the target, I would just try and keep going and going and going, right? I felt like the state that I was at was this state of
Putting down.
slowing down, stopping. And you mentioned to me that state of drawing an arrow and waiting to aim, while externally look like you stop or pause, it's a lot of work
Of course.
inside, right? So I think all that kind of came about in terms of, I think I need to do the inner work. And it was discomforting because it was not the one thing I do best in my journey, and my wife knows it too. Like, you do self-reflection journaling? Like, no lah, you're not that kind. And I felt like I needed to do that. And then come along, and this is how we met, right? Well, it was Juliana's boot camp, her origin story, her gym lessons, right? And also, I've been listening to Chris Do on YouTube, right? All these origin stories, and it just dawned on me like, hey, I'm the guy who actually pitched storytelling, and actually I've built the story of my life and others also, but also my life work in my own origin story.
Yeah.
But I realized I'm in a state of change, and that origin story needs to be revisited. Yeah, it needs to change. But for a long time, you're like, origin story, only one origin story. Origin story of how you became Spider-Man.
Origin of origin.
Yeah, correct. Like, there's no such thing as finding another origin story.
Yeah.
But you realize that, we all have multiple origin stories, because life is not just this linear path. It changes along the way. And I think it's that acceptance, right? The acceptance that story and that narrative that you held on, you can let go of that. You still embrace it, you acknowledge that, right? But you can let go of that in the sense of you're trying to pursue and find your new origin story, new path. And I think I was spurred on by many things. I think it's that gym lesson that we have to do, the origin stories, right? It was really the prompts.
But when we did the original story and origin stories and everything else, this time round, would you say, it's very different from before?
Yes.
It was not in some ways lead by the external, lead by the doing, but it was more intentional about what you need to look within, and then come the output.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Because you're no longer the entrepreneur, the co-founder of a company, the persona that I think you're trying to put on, right? You don't have work, right? I have no identity, I have no job. And it's just very raw, right? But that rawness is the realness, because when you do that work at that point in time, you're showing up as who you are. You're not showing up as like some title.
No roles, no titles anymore. So it's just Derek.
Correct.
Derek at that point in time.
Yeah. And of which then you realize that the identity and the role is multifaceted, right? It is who I am as husband, father, son.
Which is your core relationship in life.
Correct. Yes.
And in some ways, if you talk about it, right? I mean, I've read through and heard a lot of people when they're at their deathbed and whatever. These are the most important and most precious relationship that they feel they wanted to do better, do more, not your roles, not
Correct.
the car you have, and not anything material or outside
Correct.
of you,
Yeah.
right? So you were at that point
Yes.
reflecting and writing your origin story based on those relationships that you felt that is
Correct.
most precious to you.
But I was also now digging deeper also, because when I lost the company, I lost with it the vision, the purpose, everything. I was like, okay, I give it away lah. But you realize that, and a lot of it is, I think after a while, you realize that you've become that you become that vehicle that drives the company, right? Because you're part of that company, you manifested that into something external, and then you are that person that's driving that.
So you and that thing became one.
Became one, but to a point where it's really I was driving that. I was the company. I throw a lot of that vision, a lot of that purpose into the company as that vehicle. But you start doing the inner work also. Because apart from relationships, I felt like it was also driving back down to the sense of self, right? Because identity is broken and lost as well also. I was trying to go back to passion and purpose again. And there was also a pivot in terms of the reframe for me, which was now seeing the company, seeing Viddsee as a vehicle of me, right? It was one creation that I had that, in that period of time, served its mission.
Yep.
Yes, it helped me find a purpose, as a purpose that I can resonate with. I can actually hold on to it. I don't have to let go of it. So it was also a bit of a reframe in trying to find that within self, that purpose, right? And I kind of like brought that back to, I love impacting lives through stories. And I love to continue doing that in maybe another vehicle, right? It just I don't have to lose that. I don't have to I cannot impact lives through stories anymore because I've lost this vehicle. No, I can do it in other ways.
And it's interesting. So in some ways, what attitude do you have to adopt, right? Or
Yes.
at what point do you need to say, okay, right? How do you go about thinking that? Because you could have gone, it's mine, I hang on to it, it's mine anyway, right?
Yeah.
But now you actually say, that's still mine. But I am still going to continue with passion, but through another avenue, through another creation of my passion. I mean, in some ways, it's an expansion and extension. So what type of attitude did you need to embrace, or mindset, or even skill set did you need to learn?
So someone was sharing with me that, you know your passion very well. You also now found purpose, or refine kind of like that purpose again, right? The one thing that I know I haven't done was deeper, right? Deeper into like core values, strength, etc. And really kind of understanding oneself. So I felt like the attitude or the skills that I now need to do was actually the most discomforting thing that I've never wanted to look at, right? Which was really self-work. And I think I was trying to find tools to support. I think prompts was super helpful as well, and actually just spending time really understanding that you can slow down, actually spend time and take time for yourself, and of course supported by the tools or certain skill sets, and how people are advising how you can do some of this work, right? I think allowed me to do the work, to kind of do that inner work, to mind my past, right? To really come in and acknowledge and figure out, connect the dots as well also, to give me an understanding of what was consistent, right? What was consistent that shows that is actually my values showing up without me knowing, but being able to name it as well also, to like,
able to verbalize.
to be able to verbalize that. I think
And
it's
in
so
some ways,
important.
other than you talk about values, actually, I would hear it as who Derek is. Who am I?
Yes.
Right? Who am I without all the fluff? Who am I without my roles? Who am I without Viddsee? Who am I? But who am I?
Correct.
And being able to sit with that
Yes.
and embrace it.
Yeah.
What would you say to anyone, or our viewers out there, if they are experiencing change like what you did, if they are going through some sort of challenges or discomfort, what would you say to them?
My thoughts is, seeing what I've gone through, I know that there are people out there who have supported me, who have helped me, and I know that they're out there for you as well also. The journey to, maybe what you say, be open to allow some of these people to come in and say, hey, I can help you out here. And then being open to accept that